Joining me now is Washington Congressman Adam Smith. He is a ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Good to see you, Congressman. Let's get into it here because the polls show a majority of Americans think Trump is serious about the U.S. trying to take control of Canada and Greenland. And in that interview, he seemed to leave the door open to military action, at least against Greenland. Is that what you have heard? And did you hear that as well from that interview?
Well, I think he said it very plainly. I mean, what it ultimately means long term, who knows? But he's not taking it off the table, and he's certainly making it clear that he thinks that would be an acceptable course of action. And it's not an acceptable course of action. And also, it's important to remember Denmark controls Greenland. They are a very close ally. The president's not wrong that Greenland is an important strategic place right now in the world, given its proximity to the Arctic, what's going on with Russia and China. But it's controlled by a very close ally. We have a military base on Greenland. Our national security interests can very easily be met in Greenland simply by working with Denmark and Greenland. Instead, the president appears hell-bent to be a conquering president, which that undermines what the United States is supposed to be about on such a deep level it's hard to adequately express, and it also undermines our role in the world. We've built up a system of partnerships and allies based on the idea of sovereignty and some set of rules governing. President Trump seems determined to say, no, we're going back to might makes right, and we're going to take whatever we want. And guess what? If that's his approach, China, Russia, Iran, a whole bunch of other countries are going to say, great, let's go. This really undermines peace and stability in the world.
Let's interview with Meet the Press yesterday when he was asked about the notion of invading Greenland. Listen.
I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish them and all of that. But we need that for international security.
The very idea of taking Greenland by military force, your reaction to that, is that American?
Well, it's not going to happen. If it did, it would provoke an impeachment crisis almost immediately. Donald Trump very often gets about 10% of something right and then just makes a mess of the rest of it. Greenland is of enormous security importance to the United States, both because of potential minerals that might be found as the ice and snow melt, and because of the maritime domain around Greenland. And we've recognized that since 1868, when William Seward tried to buy Greenland from Denmark, right after the year before he had successfully bought Alaska from Russia. And I could go through a lot more history in that regard. If we could just stop talking about invading Greenland and get some diplomats from Denmark and Greenland and the U.S. behind closed doors, I think we could resolve this very satisfactorily. In the Cold War, we had as many as 16 military bases on Greenland. We can take care of the situation on our behalf of all NATO members, without talking about invasion.
The White House has had to scale back a U.S. delegation's trip to another target of its ambitions, Greenland, now that that trip has become highly contentious, to say the least. Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance are planning to visit the semi-autonomous Danish territory on Friday. Denmark's prime minister is accusing the U.S. of putting, quote, unacceptable pressure on the island. President Trump has said repeatedly he wants to make Greenland part of the U.S., claiming it is vital to U.S. national security interests and somehow that the people of Greenland support that idea. Polls say otherwise. Joining me now, Rasmus Jarlov. He's a conservative member of the Danish parliament and the head of Denmark's Defense Committee. He's also the spokesperson on Greenlandic affairs for the Conservatives. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
First, let me ask you this question. How do you react? How do your colleagues in Parliament react to hear the leader, the president of a treaty ally, the United States, saying with a smile at times that the U.S. is going to take over Greenland? How do you respond to that?
We're not happy with that. It's unheard of that you have allied countries that want to annex part of another country. Greenland is a fully integrated part of Denmark. They are citizens of Denmark. And there's absolutely no way that we will agree to hand them over to become Americans against their will. And they don't want to become Americans. It is very, very clear. They had an election 2 weeks ago, and there wasn't a single out of the 31 members elected for the local Greenlandic parliament, not one wants to become part of the United States. So this is a hostile attempt of taking over, annexing people, subjugating people that do not want to become part of the United States.
There are those in this country who will often say about Donald Trump, that's just talk. He's not serious. It's bluster. It's part of a negotiation. I wonder how Denmark hears those comments. Are your colleagues in government there taking the threat to take Greenland seriously?
Yes, we are taking it seriously. It has been repeated so many times by now that it would be weird not to take it seriously. I have no doubt, and we have no doubt, that if the American government could annex Greenland, they would definitely do it. They want it to become American, but we can't do it. I mean, first of all, it's completely unreasonable. There is no legitimacy behind this claim. It is against the will of the people living in Greenland. And secondly, there is no need for it, because everything that the United States could want from Greenland, being having a stronger military presence or minerals, they can have that if they just talk to us normally. There's no need to annex the island. If they want to extract minerals, just put up the investments needed. They have been looking for international investors for decades without finding them. But if Americans want to do it, Greenland is open for business. If they want to have a stronger military presence, that is also possible. So there is no need for this talk. We could definitely meet whatever reasonable demands and wishes the Americans have, but the thought of annexing it and handing it over to the U.S. is out of the question.
What is Denmark prepared to do to resist American economic pressure to give up Greenland, and even possibly military pressure?
Everything. We will do everything to resist, and we expect to be exposed to a lot of pressure. Maybe the same way that Canada is being pressured at the moment. Maybe the same will happen to us, but it's not going to change our mind. So we only hope that the American government does not continue to escalate and take this further and further, because we can't do it. We cannot hand over 57,000 of our citizens to become Americans against their will.
Do you envision any scenario where, and this is remarkable just to say it out loud, given Denmark and the U.S. are treaty allies, and as I often remind Americans, Denmark fought alongside the U.S. in Afghanistan and lost a great number of soldiers there, in fact, quite a high percentage compared to the size of their military. But can you envision a scenario where U.S. and Danish forces somehow come face to face over Greenland?
I certainly hope not, but that's up to the American government. We're not going to back down. We're not going to hand over Greenland, regardless of what type of pressure is applied to us. So I certainly hope it won't come to that. Yeah. There is a lot at stake here, because this is not only a matter of being reasonable to Denmark and Greenland, it is also a matter of the entire Western alliance. Nobody's going to be allied to a country that tries to annex parts of that country's territory. So if the U.S. wants to be a global leader, and we've been very happy to let the U.S. lead the world, but then you have to behave. You can't just attack your allies and try to take their territory while at the same time trying to help Russia to gain more territory in Europe. So we think American foreign policy is going in a very bad direction. Yeah. And we're very, very sad if we are going to lose the great relationship we had with the United States for so many decades. We think it has served both sides, and we're very happy to continue to let the U.S. lead. But this is just this is too much, obviously.
Yeah, and listen, blood spilt, right, for that alliance. Similar for Denmark and Canada, as we were discussing earlier. Rasmus Jarlov, thanks so much for joining.
Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha Vance are on their way to Greenland. They're leading a U.S. delegation on a one-day trip to visit the U.S. Space Force installation there. They could also be in for a chilly reception from people in Greenland. The leader of Greenland called the original plans for Usha Vance to visit solo highly aggressive. And President Trump continues, of course, his unrelenting quest to buy the island, saying this yesterday.
We need Greenland for national security and international security. So I think we'll go as far as we have to go. We need Greenland.
Controversy erupts this morning over a planned U.S. visit to Greenland this week. It comes as President Trump has pushed to annex the autonomous Danish territory, saying he thinks the U.S. will get it one way or the other. Second Lady Usha Vance and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz are expected to be among the Americans visiting. The White House says Usha Vance will attend the island's national dog sled race and, quote, celebrate Greenlandic culture and unity. But Greenland's prime minister is slamming the visit, calling it, quote, highly aggressive and sinking relations to the U.S. to a new low. Let's get right to the White House. CNN's Elena Treen is there. It's the second international trip by the second lady, Elena, and it's an odd one.
It is, and I think it just is really putting a further spotlight on this administration's desires to try and purchase Greenland, despite, of course, we're hearing repeatedly now, several different times over from both the leaders of Greenland, but also Denmark, that Greenland is not for sale. And just to back up here, to give you the big picture, I've talked to several White House and Trump administration officials about the president's desire to purchase Greenland and make it a U.S. territory. This both before he was in office and after he was sworn in. And part of the reasoning behind it is, one, they argue it would be economically beneficial to the United States. That's in part because Greenland has vast stores of rare earth minerals that are would be great for technology here in the United States. But another, and this is the key thing that I think the Greenland's prime minister was really focusing on here in his criticism of these visits, is there are national security interests as well. That's in part
Denmark responding, saying, here's what we're going to do to stop Trump. And they've been saying it for the past month, really going all the way back at least to the stupid Vance visit, where Vance and his wife went there and made everything 10 times worse. But it's also important you hear from Americans and across the political spectrum, because you have people who are on the Democratic side and the Republican side saying this is silly. And polling has suggested that a majority of Americans do not want to see Greenland, Panama, Canada, Mexico, whatever, annexed into the United States. And I think that's big because you need the voices of both. The United States is a big, powerful country. They're not as big and powerful as they think they are. They're not as big and powerful as they once were before the rise of China and all of that, like they were maybe in the early 1990s after the end of the Cold War. Like, there are other powers in the world. But the United States can still flex its muscles a little bit, right? And having people in the States saying, no, there's no consensus even in our own country to follow along these stupid Trump plans. And that's critical because it makes it easier for foreign countries to resist when they understand that Donald does not have his own country corralled. Like, Canada, for example, can look at the tariff fight and say, among other things, one, we have to respond, but we know we're united. You can poll Canadians that didn't even vote for Carney, saying they broadly support him responding to Trump's tariffs, right? I didn't vote for Carney. I voted for Jagmeet Singh in the NDP, but I support him doing tariffs, right? Conservatives, at least some of them, do as well. And so they could say, well, Greenland's united. Canada's united. Mexico's united. Trump has divided his own country, and you got American politicians siding with foreigners. That's how bad he is.